This is one of the most important conversations we need to have, but no one seems to be talking about it. It's never been easier to get into debt here in America, and I need you to start paying attention. Here's why. I wasn't really sure if this topic deserved its own video until I heard about Doordash Debt. Yes, you heard that right. You can now finance your spicy chicken sandwich in 4 interest-free installments. It's actually comical to me how nothing describes America better than an inflammatory food combo with a side of crippling debt. It's absolutely baffling to me how easy it is for you to get into debt nowadays. Need groceries? You can finance them. Want new sneakers? 4 easy payments. Can't afford rent? Just use an installment loan. Debt isn't just a financial burden, it is now a lifestyle for a lot of Americans. In the teenage and adult years of earlier generations like Gen X and Boomers, credit cards were common, but not nearly as casual or frictionless as they are today. In the 80s and 90s, credit cards were still viewed as a tool meant to be used only for emergencies or for big ticket purchases. You had to apply through the mail, wait for approval, and often you needed a pretty decent credit just to get approved. But today, anyone with a pulse can just go online, apply for a card, and start using it instantly without really thinking about the consequences that come with taking on that line of credit.
Credit card debt, credit card debt.
When you add buy now, pay later onto that equation, debt has become something you can just accumulate by clicking next. The worst part is most people don't even realize how deep they're into debt until it's already too late. So today we're breaking down the debt trap that's become so normal here in America and how it's affecting you. Look, I love credit cards. If you play your points and your rewards right, there's so much value that you can extract out of these cards. Cashback, intro offers, travel benefits and perks, lounge access, the list goes on. Credit cards can be one of the biggest financial hacks ever if you know how to use them right. So needless to say, I am not against credit cards. Although I've never personally used buy now, pay later, I can also see the appeal with a lot of these services. I can see how dividing a large purchase in 4 interest-free payment installments can really give you some cash flow and give you some breathing room if you need to afford a car repair or a larger ticket item that you didn't really plan on buying right now. If there's no interest cost, then in theory, there is no downside in using any of these services, right? The problem I have with these services is how easy they make for you to get into debt. And that usually happens when people don't quite understand what they're really signing up for. Most buy now and pay later services like Klarna, Afterpay, and Affirm offer interest-free payments at first, but interest and fees will often kick in under certain conditions. If you miss a payment, interest charges and late fees will kick in, and while the original plan might be interest-free, these fees and interest costs can definitely add up quickly. When we're talking about buy now, pay later, most people think about 4 easy payments that are interest-free, but that's only their short-term model, which is typically around 6 weeks. Longer-term financing stretches out these payments over 6, 12, 24, even 36 months. Now, on paper, that sounds really nice, right? You make these big purchases more affordable by extending the length of your loan. But here's a catch. These plans, the long-form ones, they usually do come with interest, and sometimes a whole lot of it. If you're financing something small, usually under $500, these services will often offer you the interest-free 4 payment installments plan. These loans are often paid in 4 payment installments, usually taking place every 2 weeks, with no interest charges at all if all payments are made on time. When it comes to larger purchases though, think about furniture, electronics, car parts, you're going to be offered a long-term financing program where Klarna or Afterpay, they're going to offer you the option of paying in 6 or even 36 months. The problem is that these plans do charge you interest. These interest rates will often vary between 10 all the way to 30% APR. Crazy. I don't even think credit cards can go as high as 30%. I think the max is like 29, 84, I don't know. 30% is pretty high. Many users will see those pop-ups in the checkout screen where it says only $30 a month, and they often assume it's a great deal, but they often miss the fine print where it discloses that they will be paying interest for the next 3 years, in the example of a 36-month loan, for example. And here's why that's a problem. Coined by behavioral economists like Drazen Perlich and George Lowenstein, the pain of pain describes the emotion discomfort we feel when we make a purchase, especially when we use cash. Credit cards create a low pain of pain. The cost feels abstract, delayed, and disconnected from your bank account since you don't see the impact of the purchase right away. This lower pain of pain leads to people spending more with their credit cards than they would if they were using cash. Crazy thing is, studies show that people are willing to spend significantly more when they're using a credit card versus when they're using cash for the exact same product. Buy now, pay later takes this effect even a step further. There's often no upfront costs, so the pain of pain is absolutely zero. You get that dopamine hit from buying buying a new product right away without that financial sting, which comes weeks later when your payments due. Apps like Klarna, Affirm, Afterpay have made using buy now and pay later feel like a harmless financial hack. And now that Klarna is teaming up with Doordash, we have officially reached the point where people are financing their fries. But how did we even get here in the first place? Loans have been around for centuries, with long-term loans such as mortgages and auto loans being the most common ones. These loans required collateral or a good credit score and are often repaid within 3 to 30 years. Our parents obviously also had to get into debt in order to achieve their financial goals of buying their first property or upgrading the family car every couple of years. But Gen Z and late millennials are borrowing a lot differently than older generations, and it really shows. According to a 2023 report by TransUnion, Gen Z's average credit card balances grew by 19% year over year, the fastest of any generation. In contrast, while boomers and Gen Xers tend to carry higher balances, they borrow more traditionally, using credit cards mainly for emergencies and only taking on long-term debt, such as mortgages and auto loans. Gen Z and millennials are increasingly taking on debt for day-to-day consumer goods that offer little to no financial value. Think takeout meals, clothing, concert tickets, and even at times grocery runs, items that provide a short-term satisfaction but little to no financial value. It's true that with increased cost of living and stagnant wages, that younger generations are borrowing more and more, but this sort of casual borrowing often leads to a spending cycle that feels manageable in the short term, but that becomes overwhelming over time. But this brings me to my second point, which is the bigger picture behind this problem. It is so easy to sit here and just clown on the younger generations as if they're so naive for falling victim to these financial products. But let's be real for just a second. This isn't about just reckless spending or lack of discipline. For a growing number of Americans, debt isn't just a choice, it's survival. When your paycheck runs out before the month does, borrowing becomes the only option. In fact, over 60% of Americans are carrying a balance on their credit cards from one month to another, often paying 20 to 30% interest APR just to keep up. A $500 emergency like a car repair or a medical bill can easily balloon up to $1,200 when interest kicks in. Wages have barely moved in recent years, while the cost of living such as groceries, gasoline, healthcare, and basic necessities keeps climbing year after year. And if we're talking about Gen Z, we've been sold the dream. Go to college, get your degree, and there will be a high-paying job waiting for you. But we all know the reality is far less glamorous. Most entry-level jobs do not pay enough to justify the cost of putting yourself through college for 4 years. And if things couldn't get worse, many of them will ask for 2 to 3 years experience, even for junior roles. It's all so backwards. You need experience to get a job, and you need a job to get experience. And for you to get that job, you will likely need a degree, so you spend 4 years studying, and that keeps you from gaining any sort of job experience. Now you tell me how that makes sense. Meanwhile, the average student loan borrower graduates school with over $37,000 in debt, and instead of starting their adult life ahead like they thought they would, they're starting their careers playing financial catch-up with a big loan over their heads. With all that in mind, it's not surprising to me at all that younger generations are falling for these debt traps. But this isn't just a money problem, it's a mindset problem. We're sort of raised to believe that looks matter a lot more than what you actually have. We are told to fake it until you make it, wear the right clothes, drive the right cars, go to the right school, and live a lifestyle that signals success on social media and for our parents. And the sad reality is that a lot of Americans feel pressured by this societal standard, that they go into debt to fund that lifestyle. And when owning a home, building wealth, and retiring before the age of 70 feels so far away and unachievable, people just simply stop planning for the future. Instead, they start chasing whatever makes them feel good at the moment. To go deeper, we can't just ignore the fact that for Gen Z and for younger generations, there's this large sense of hopelessness. When long-term goals start to feel so out of reach, instant gratification starts to feel like the only reward we can actually achieve. Look, it is easy to feel overwhelmed when you're buried in debt or when you find yourself in a financial cycle that feels impossible to climb out of. But the truth is, you're not powerless at all. Taking a moment to sit down and really have a bird's eye view of your finances and draft a plan to overcome whatever hurdles you see along the way is what's going to set you apart from all the other people that are just mindlessly going through life and getting into debt and getting these instant gratifications, not really thinking about the consequences that this will come with in later years. Now, the goal isn't to deprive you of nice things or to build this scarcity mindset. The goal is simply to be intentional with our money. And if you're already deep into debt and you don't know what to do not panic. There's so many people out there that pay thousands of dollars worth of debt every year. And it's not because they suddenly made $1 million in a year or won the lottery, but because they made a plan and they stuck to it. Remember, building wealth does not require perfection. It just requires progress. Let me know what you think. If you think I'm just thinking about this too much, or if you agree that these buy now and pay later services are dangerous for young Americans, especially for Gen Z. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing. You have no idea how much it means to me and how much it does for the channel. I know that there's a lot going on right now when it comes to politics and the economy, but I've recently made a video on some recent changes that happened to our tariffs. So if you're interested in checking that out, click over here.